Before you can have somebody like this in your life, you have to come to believe in yourself. You have to come to believe that you are deserving of such a person.
And I always had this thought in my whole life of what's wrong with my body, because I always had stuff going on, which was weird and random. In the same month, I developed pelvic pain and skin issues.
So when I hear that, I'm already suspicious about a neuroplastic origin.
Welcome to The Story Behind the Symptoms, a podcast from Symptomatic.me. Your host is David Clark, MD, a board-certified gastroenterologist who successfully diagnosed and treated over 7,000 patients with neuroplastic pain or illness. Each episode, we dive into our guests' life experiences to uncover the deeper causes of their symptoms. By listening to their story, you will gain insights that advance your own journey towards knowledge that becomes healing.
Hello, and welcome to the Story Behind the Symptoms podcast. I am your host, Dr. David Clark, president of the Association for Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. And what we do in this podcast is talk to people who have suffered neuroplastic symptoms about their condition and try to figure out what some of the stresses might be that are responsible. My guest today is Hilde Swicker from the Netherlands. And Hilde, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hey everybody that's listening, I guess. I'm Hilde Swicker, I'm 29 years old and I am from Amsterdam. I live with my boyfriend and our 2 cats here, and I am dealing with what I think is neuroplastic pain. So yeah, I feel really thankful that I can be here today, and I'm already saying I'm sorry for not knowing all my words perfectly sometimes because I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm just gonna try and do my best.
Well, I'm sure you'll do a great job, and your English is much better than my Dutch, so I appreciate you're doing that. I can order a few things at the bar in Dutch and of course order pannenkoeken, but after that, very limited. So why don't you tell us about when your symptoms began? I always like to go to the beginning and what they have done over time.
So it's not really clear when my symptoms began because I have had neuroplastic symptoms, I think, for all my life. Now, when I look back at it, but my specific abdomen, lower stomach pains, whatever you want to call it, started, I think, 5 years ago. And I had other neuroplastic symptoms like knee pain, hip pain, pelvic pain now as well, skin problems, all that stuff. But my stomach pain started 5 years ago and then it went away for quite some time and then it came back and now it's still there. So that's a little bit what it is.
Okay. Where in your stomach is the pain? Is it all over or just in one area?
So it began really in the top of my stomach. So really reflux kind of pain, but I didn't know it was reflux. So I went to the GP a few times and I thought it was something in my chest, but they couldn't figure out that it was reflux or they couldn't figure out what it was. So then I just went back home without answers and I was like, okay, well then it should be fine. So then it went away for I would say 8 months or something. And then it came back still on the really high in my stomach, like a pressure, like a heartburn kind of pain. And then I did a SIBO test. You must know it probably. And I got because I thought I had SIBO because I read a lot about. So I came in the mind-body scene basically because of my pelvic pain. So not because of my stomach pain, but because of my pelvic pain. And I read a lot of the articles online, obviously, because I went Googling all my free time. And I saw that a lot of people with pelvic pain also have SIBO. So I was like, oh my God.
Well, we should explain.
SIBO.
Yeah, we should explain for our viewers who are not familiar that it stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it's a condition where the bacteria that normally live in the small intestine grow very numerous, and lots of symptoms have been attributed to that. However, the tests for SIBO are often incorrect. They can show that a person has SIBO and in people who actually do not. So I just want to clarify that for people.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so then I basically first I went back to the doctor and they checked my stomach on stuff, and SIBO, you say, I didn't know. We here say SIBO.
That's okay.
They checked my stomach and they said there's nothing wrong with your stomach. We can just see that you have like this thing that's open. So that's why your reflux is coming up, but your stomach is perfectly fine. And then I went back home again. And then I was like, no, I'm not fine. I can feel that I'm not fine. So I went to a naturopath, like a natural doctor, and they did testing with me. So it's like a breath test you do. You drink something. I just explain it for the listeners. You drink something and then you have to blow in like this thing. So it's a breath test. And I did it multiple times and it always came back. But the interesting thing was the moment I thought I had SIBO, I got it, basically. So my first test was not that high in numbers, but then also my symptoms got worse. And I did this whole natural route with this natural doctor with herbals and all that kind of stuff. I also took antibiotics in the beginning. Then I did this herbal route, and then I did the elimination elemental diet where you only drink fluids for 3 weeks. I did that. That was like a few months ago. And then after that diet, my numbers went down. So the SIBO test was almost negative again. But since then, it all got worse, way worse.
None of these treatments really helped you?
No.
Okay. So I just to get a complete story of all the symptoms. You talked about your stomach symptoms. What about the pelvic pain? Is that also 5 years or is that a different?
Pelvic pain is 4 years. So it began with the stomach pain. Then it went away, my stomach pain. And now it's all really logic to me because I know about the neuroplastic brain and like the symptoms and all. But back then I didn't know about it. So I was like, what's wrong with me? And I always had this thought in my whole life of what's wrong with my body, because I always had stuff going on, which was weird and random. And so the stomach pain went away. And then all of a sudden in the same month, I developed pelvic pain and skin issues, really weird skin issues. They would come and it would be like pustules and they become white. It's not acne. It's really weird. Something I've never had. The dermatologist, all the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. No cream, no nothing would react on it. In the same month. So my stomach pain went away and then that came basically.
Yeah, that's actually a common characteristic of neuroplastic symptoms is that they can go away for no obvious reason. New symptoms can come on for no obvious reason. So when I hear that, I'm already suspicious about a neuroplastic origin.
Yeah, and the interesting part, this is also something you would want to hear, I think, because the interesting part is that I have had pelvic pain before. It was in 2017. They found these weird spots on my, I don't know what the name is in English, like uterus or something.
Okay.
I don't know. And they found these weird spots and I had to use this cream that would like burn everything. I didn't know it would be that intense, but like it burned basically my whole vagina. And yeah, and I had like pain there before, like pelvic pain for I think like a year or something, and it wouldn't go away. So every time I went back to the gynecologist and asked like, what is this cream? Like, why does it take so long? Blah, blah. It wouldn't go away. And then really suspicious, I fell in love with my partner now. And all of a sudden my pelvic pain was gone. But then 1.5 years later, it came back with a vengeance, and that's where I'm at now. So, because I didn't know about neuroplastic pain, I really thought something was wrong with my pelvic pain. So I've been everywhere, like urologist, gynecologist, multiple hospitals, every natural route. I went to healers, like you name it, and I've been there. I took all the supplements and guess what? Nothing worked. And nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So it came back a year and a half ago, you said?
No, sorry, 4 years. So it's been gone.
It started 4 years. Okay. So, I'm sorry. Say again, what has happened for 1.5 years?
Yeah. So in 2017, it was the cream that like kind of like burned it all. Then I had pain for a year. Then it went away 1.5 years. And now it's back for 4 years. So now I'm already in pain again for 4 years.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And you said you had symptoms your whole life. Do you remember what some of the symptoms were when you were a child?
Eczema? That's how you...
Yes, yes.
eczema. Yeah, so I had really bad eczema when I was a kid and it went away all of a sudden. I also had stomach issues, like in my lower stomach. I couldn't really poo when I was little. I can still remember my grandma had to like hold me in the toilet and then I could like poo. It was really hard for me. And then I also had like this patellofemoral syndrome in your knees for multiple months. Couldn't walk. It started in one knee. Then all of a sudden my second knee also hurt. Couldn't walk for a few months.
Could not walk.
No, it was like really painful to walk. Yeah, I had like physio and it worked for it. I think because I had a lot of trust that it would work. That's why it worked. And
Physiotherapy, for my viewers, physiotherapy, yes.
Yeah. And then I still get sometimes when I walk like too long, I still get knee pain sometimes, I guess because of the neural pathways in my brain. And then I have hip pain. So my hips all of a sudden like start to hurt. And since a few weeks, it's really interesting since Christmas and all the family gatherings and stressful events, I guess. I also have back pain and it's really interesting because a few months ago I was like, whoa, it's so interesting. Everybody's talking about back pain in the mind-body scene. And like I've had back pain when I was in my teenage years, but it never came back. So interesting. And then now, since a few weeks, I got back pain.
Okay. Yeah, we're recording this about 4 weeks after Christmas, just for the viewers' time reference. Okay, well, this is obviously a very significant story of physical symptoms going back a long way. I feel like I want to, before getting into the story about stresses, some of my patients experience improvements and also flare-ups in relation to what's happening in their close personal relationships. So it is possible, if you find yourself in a very good, loving, mutually supportive personal relationship, for symptoms to improve in response to that. It also can be possible for symptoms to get worse in response to that, just depending on certain other factors that we can talk about later on. But I'm just wondering if you said your symptoms went away, your pelvic symptoms went away when you fell in love with your boyfriend, and then they came back. Was there anything that changed with your boyfriend when they came back, for good or for bad? I mean, for example, now you live with your boyfriend. Did you start living with him and then the symptoms came back at that time? Something significant like that?
Yeah, it's like an interesting story, I think, because my boyfriend and me met in 2019 and we kind of both of us came out of like a relationship back then. So it was really hard for us to kind of like put a label on our relationship, especially for my boyfriend, because he came out of like a really long relationship. And it was a struggle the first like 1.5 years, I would say, for us, because I was always like, does he like me? Does he not? Like, are we doing this? Are we not? And before my pain started, we kind of like went separate ways a few months because I was like, I'm done with this. I just want an answer. And we went separate ways. And then when we came back together, because he was like, no, I want to be with you. Now I know for sure I want to be with you. The moment we came back together and like everything settled down into like a healthy, good relationship and we were doing it, then all of a sudden it started. And I read about this in your book, I think, because a lot of my relationships in the past were like, I would say like toxic and like not healthy and like not safe at all. But then I met him and everything felt really good and safe. And I was like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And then this happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I call the good partner, bad illness syndrome. And there are a couple of reasons for it that we can talk about a little bit later, but it's surprisingly common pattern. It is obviously very ironic that at a time when things are going well in your life and going well in your relationship, that's when you would become ill. It doesn't seem to make any sense, but after we talk about other sources of stress that you have been through, it will make a lot more sense, and we will come back to it at that time.
Perfect.
So you've had lots of medical care that has not, in the end, been successful. And when I hear that, I'm, again, thinking about neuroplastic symptoms, and that means I'm thinking about places where there has been stress. Having a good boyfriend is one of the stresses, but I want to go and talk about other sources, especially since you had these symptoms starting when you were a child. And so many of my patients, the stresses that happened to them occurred when they were children. They may not have seemed like they were all that stressful because none of us has a parallel life that we can compare ourselves with. So when we look back, we don't necessarily see everything that was happening as being too stressful, but I'd still like to hear the story of anything that you remember that you wouldn't want to have for a child of your own, for example.
Yes. So my father was an alcoholic until I was 12, I would say. So I have like two different types of picture of my dad, basically. Because when I was a kid, he was always very angry and drunk and aggressive. And I also have a sister and a brother who are older than me. And they were the ones that would always get into a fight with him. And I was the one that was basically on the team of my dad. So my dad and me were one team, and my sister, brother, and mother were one team, basically. So there was a lot of like fighting at home and like a lot of stress. And my father was really unpredictable, I would say. Like one day he was really sweet and like really sweet and caring, and the other day was really mad and like angry and that type of stuff. So I guess like I'm really so what happened was basically that I was always the person that would try to keep everything together and like make everyone happy. So I kind of like stepped in that role where I was always like happy and like being a clown and like making fun and like, you know, like joking around and all that stuff, because then I kept it safe. I guess that's how my youth kind of is. And my dad was like a silent alcoholic. Do you say it like that? I don't know, when he's like not being honest about it. So we always thought he had like a weird disease going on because he was always really weird, which I now know was because he was drunk. So when I was 12, got to know that he was an alcoholic, and he basically like found help for it, which is really good. And I'm really grateful for that. My parents are luckily still together because of that. I don't know if I would say lucky about that, because I don't know if it has been good. But yeah, that's how my younger years were.
Yeah, that's obviously extremely challenging for a young child, especially being the youngest in the family and taking on the responsibility of being the peacemaker and always having to be watchful for when things were going to go bad, because then you would have to be back in that peacemaker role. Children are not supposed to have to do things like that, and it can have a range of long-term consequences for people. One of them is that because they're a child, they're not going to be successful in solving all the problems, at least most of the time. And many children will respond to that by just trying harder. They will try to please everybody, make everybody happy. They will try to be perfect. They will be very critical of themselves when they are not successful. They will not think very well of themselves. They will not feel like they are a very good person inside. They will feel like they are not measuring up to the quality of other people. They will sometimes feel like failures or feel worthless because of this. And they will absorb this at such a young age that they will carry it with them into their adult years. Have you noticed any of those personal characteristics in yourself?
All of them. The funny part is that I'm like a social worker myself, so I kind of brought it to my work as well. I'm like working with, we call it Kopkov kids. It's like basically a shorten of like kid with like a parent with a alcohol abuse or like drugs abuse, anything like that. So I took it with me, I guess, my whole life. And I'm also really perfectionistic in like everything I do. I also am really critical to myself and like, not really thinking highly of myself, I guess. I'm trying, obviously. But like, it's hard. Yeah.
Yes, it's very hard when you learn these assumptions about yourself at such a young age, and they come from the most powerful and important people in your life at that age. So it's very natural that they become part of how you see yourself. Another long-term impact that you already mentioned is that if you grow up solving problems in the household, taking care of family members, trying to fix things, solve problems, it's very natural to fall into close personal relationships with people that also have problems, have issues in their lives that need to be fixed or that need support. And so you end up commonly, my patients do, in relationships where they are giving to the other person a lot more than they are getting back. It sounds like you had some of those relationships also.
Well, it's interesting because when I was 12 and we got to know that my father was drinking, I completely changed. So I didn't, the people-pleasing kid that I was before, I kind of like completely changed into someone that really had a really high wall, because I was like, so if my father is lying to me, then how can I trust anybody else in this world? So I became the other person. So I would say about myself, I was the toxic person in a relationship. So I would be really avoidant and like really not open for love and not able to receive it. So like my past relationships were really, like guys that were trying to give me love, but I was always really avoidant and like not able to trust anybody and like having really high walls and like being really mean and like that type of thing. So I kind of like completely changed my people-pleasing behavior into the other side of like not wanting that ever again.
Okay. You said some of the relationships you were in were toxic or dangerous?
Not really. Yeah, dangerous, not really, but like toxic, I would say. Yeah. I could just like shut down and like not talk to someone when I got mad, like a really avoidant, not talk for weeks, that kind of stuff, because I would just like shut down and like not being able to like trust and like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's another long-term impact of a difficult childhood experience, is that a lot of my patients have a lot of emotions in relation to the experiences they had, but in order to get through their childhood experience, they had to take those emotions and kind of push them down, repress them so that they were not being felt, just as a way to survive their childhood experience. But sometimes later on, the emotions would come out. There would be something that would trigger an emotion, and there would be a sudden burst of one emotion or another, usually anger, but sometimes other emotions like fear, shame, grief, or guilt. And many of my patients would be surprised at these outbursts, especially of anger, feeling like, where did that come from? I don't feel like there was enough of a trigger for me to get as angry as I did. And did you ever experience that yourself? Or maybe the shutting down and not communicating was a way of expressing anger also?
I guess I'm like really avoided and anxious, both of them. So I would say like I had like this outburst of like anger all of a sudden, like really crazy, like stomping and like screaming and like crazy. So I couldn't really regulate my emotions or anything. I feel like I got better in that, but I am really big in my emotions. So, but I also really suppressed a lot. So my sister, I talk with my sister a lot lately, and she also told me like, you were really numb in your teenage years. You were like, nothing could touch you, or like nothing, it felt like nothing, nobody could hurt you or anything like that. So I would really numb myself out and like not feel my emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a survival technique. It's a way to make it through a difficult experience, because the emotions can be overwhelming and they're not pleasant. And the child who's experiencing that will find that their best solution is to try not to feel them at all. But emotions that are strong enough, if they can't be expressed, through your body from stomping or in your words, they will sometimes find a way to express themselves in the form of symptoms in your body, where obviously it can be anywhere in the body, but its emotions always have a bodily component to them. Or if you think about going for a job interview and you really want the job and you're nervous about the interview and you can get a knot in your stomach, that's a physical manifestation of the emotion. And emotions do that all the time. And in this condition, when the emotions are really strong, so are the symptoms that people get. They're more severe, they're more long lasting. And that's, I'm sure, was contributing to the physical symptoms that you were experiencing. Another long-term impact of a childhood experience like yours is having triggers in your life. These are people, events, or situations that are particularly stressful because they are connected in some way to the past. And sometimes this can be a parent, for example, who created problems for you as a child. And if they are still creating any difficulties in the present day, then that can lead to physical symptoms. Or it can be other things that are somehow happening to you today that are connected to the past and are much more stressful than they would be otherwise because of that connection. Any of those things are going on. Not everybody has them.
I feel like my dad can definitely trigger me. That's also what happened on Christmas. So I feel like he's still present in my life, obviously, and we have like really good connection, I would say, but it's also a difficult connection because there's a lot of trauma, obviously. So he could trigger me. And I feel like lately I'm being in therapy and I'm working with a TMS psychologist as well. So I'm really like unpacking my traumas and my childhood and stuff. And I feel the thing that's mostly triggering me is the patterns that I have developed. So it's like things that, for example, that I'm really anxious about, like people leaving me or like doing something wrong or like, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's like really triggering for me that I developed those patterns to survive, basically.
Yeah, and clearly that would be highly stressful and something else on top of everything else we've been talking about that can contribute to the symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's come back to the boyfriend. We don't want to blame him because, he's not responsible for any of this, but nevertheless, a good relationship can also be triggering for people. And the simplest reason is that most of my patients have not been in a good relationship before. It's their first one that's really mutually supportive and caring, and where they are receiving from this person as much as they are giving, and they don't have to, worry about their problems as much as they did worry about problems of other people in the past. And that's obviously a great thing, and it's not easy to get there. Before you can have somebody like this in your life, you have to come to believe in yourself. You have to come to believe that you are deserving of such a person, that you yourself are valuable enough that you want someone like that in your life, that you deserve to have someone like that in your life. And when you've been taught the opposite of that for so many years, it's quite a change for a person to reach that level. And when a relationship that is a good one first begins, there can be still some doubt about whether you are deserving of this, whether you are worthy of this, and whether the person you are with is going to decide one day, oh, you are much less of a person than I thought, and I'm going to leave you now. People, when it's your very first very good relationship, this can be a big worry. Did you experience that?
Yes, I experienced that a lot. I feel like that's why I said I'm really anxious for people to leave me. Because it happened before, because I said like, I just want an answer and otherwise we're not continuing this. And I was devastated. Like I was so heartbroken because this was the first person I like felt safe with. And so I'm really scared that would happen again because I was like completely broken. So I guess like that's a big thing.
And now you feel like you're in a better place about that. Is that true?
Yeah, I do. But I'm still anxious. I'm still like, do I deserve this? Like, does he really like me? Like, what if he's leaving? Yeah, so I feel like because of my past and because my dad was really unpredictable, I feel like I need a lot of, how do you say that?
Reassurance?
Assurance, yes. And he is giving me a lot of it, but it always feels like it's not enough. Yeah, so I'm making, well, the first thing is like, getting aware of it, right? So I'm like really aware of like this pattern and what it's been doing lately, and I never was. So that's the first step, I guess. But I'm not as far as I would like to be in this.
Okay. But it's a learning process, and it involves learning about yourself and learning a different way of thinking about yourself than you ever have before. So this is not easy. I tell some of my patients it's as if when they were growing up, they had been taught that 2 + 2 = 5. And when you learn that as a child, you're going to make some mistakes when you're an adult. And it takes a long time to learn that, no, actually 2 + 2 = 4. And that's a big shift for someone who has learned the wrong thing for so long. Okay. Another aspect of that, and we need to come back to this idea that you just shared, but another idea that happens to a person who's in a good relationship is that the more they come to believe that they deserve this person and they are worthy of this person, the more it is clear that you deserve to be treated better as a child. Once you decide that you're a good person, a worthy person, then it means you were probably a good child as well. And that having to go through all the experiences that you did was not justified. And that can stir up a lot of emotions for people. It's when you're a child and you're in the middle of a difficult situation, you're kind of, in a way, more accepting of it because you don't have anything else to compare it with. But now you have something else to compare it with. And it can make people, at least part of them, very angry. And at the same time, people care about their parents usually, and they understand that the parents were probably doing the best they could, and they want to have a positive relationship with them. So it generates a conflict between the part of you that is angry about what you had to experience and the part of you that doesn't want to be angry about that. And so that conflict there is also stressful and can contribute to physical symptoms.
That's also really hard for me because I feel like I can't really be angry at my dad because I find it sad for him. If it makes sense. That's something I'm struggling with. Easy emotion or much more of a powerful emotion instead of like sadness or like fear, because you feel way more vulnerable, I feel like, when you feel those. So it's a struggle for me to feel that anger, and I'm going there a lot, like with my therapist lately, and also in conversations I'm having with my family members, like my sister or like even my boyfriend, that I find it really hard to be angry at him or like even be angry for my youth or something, because I'm always kind of like talking it good in a way or saying like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or like, yeah, but it's also sad for him, or like, those kind of things.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what many of my patients do. But as long as the anger is still in there, if it's not having a chance to reach your conscious awareness or not having a chance to be put into words, and not infrequently it will express itself via the body and create symptoms.
How do I do it?
One of the ways to think about it is that you can say that part of you is angry and part of you has other feelings about your family. And to just acknowledge and to say that both of them are legitimate, both of them are real, both have a right to be there, and that it's perfectly okay and not contradictory to talk about both of them, one after the other. So a lot of my patients, for example, have benefited from writing a letter to the parent that caused problems for them, not to mail the letter, but just to write it, and that they can put in the letter everything that's bad, everything that makes them angry or afraid, but also all of the good things about the relationship and all of the hopes that you have for the relationship also. And just put everything in there because they all deserve to be there. For many of my patients, the more they can put these emotions into words, either talking to a therapist or writing them in a letter or in a journal, then the less those emotions need to come out in the body. Because you're basically moving it from the body into words, and it makes a big difference. One of my patients took the letter he wrote to his father and took it to his grave and read it to him. Made a huge difference for him.
Yeah, I feel like I am journaling a lot because I like writing a lot, and like I like giving my emotions words also a lot. And I've done it before, but the hard thing for me is that I can talk about feeling angry. I can say I'm so angry for like this and this and this and this, but deep down I don't really feel that anger. You see what I mean? So I can say like, okay, this part of me is anger and this part of me is sad and like anxious about everything that happened. But I don't know if I feel it, because there's the part that is feeling sad for him is always bigger and is always like overriding the anger. But that's the whole point, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to say that both of them have a good reason to be there. It's not like they are contradicting each other. Yes, at the moment, the sadness is pushing the anger away. But if you can say that both of them have a good reason to be there, and that it's okay to write a journal page about one and then write a journal page about the other one. Or maybe just on opposite sides of the same page, 2 pages in the book. That may be a way to get closer to real feelings about it. Another exercise that people who watch this podcast will be very familiar with is to imagine a child of your own, or I don't know if you have any nieces or nephews from your older siblings, but imagine one of them growing up exactly as you did, and you have to watch them, and you can't do anything about it. You're just, as I often say, you're like a butterfly on the wall of your childhood home, and you are having to watch one of your nieces and nephews when they are the same age, or a child of your own, for example, and having to watch them try to cope with that environment, even for just a week or 10 days or so. And ask yourself, how do you feel when you are watching this child try to cope with that? And many of my patients will, number one, they will be angry that the child is having to go through that, even for just a week. And that can help them connect with the real anger that deserves to be there. But at the same time, to admire the child who is coping with all this, to be legitimately impressed with what remarkable things they are doing in that family at such a young age, trying to be the peacemaker for people who are much older than you are, and to do it, to be constantly watchful for, when the next problem is going to happen, and to be constantly pushing yourself to do even better the next time than you did the time before. It's enormously difficult for a young child. And many times you can only see how difficult it is, not when you think about yourself, but when you think about an innocent child that's suddenly thrust into this environment. Then you can get a more accurate understanding of what it was really like. Another comparison that I make for a lot of my patients is for them to imagine that their early life was as if they had been dropped into the Amazon jungle at, a young age, when they were 4 or 5 years old. And through no fault of their own, they find themselves in this highly challenging and sometimes even dangerous environment, and they have to cope with it, and they have to find their way out of it to make it to be an adult. Wouldn't we admire that child for what they had accomplished in doing that? And the biggest benefit of this comparison is that the more you can admire that young child, 5 or 8 or 11 years old, the more you can admire yourself, even as a 29-year-old. And that's very important, because the more you legitimately and correctly admire yourself, the more it makes sense that someone like your boyfriend is in your life, that he is simply admiring the same person, that your own admiration hasn't caught up with where it deserves to be. Because you learned that 2 plus 2 is equal 5, and you're trying to unlearn that. And when you learn that actually 2 plus 2 equals 4, then it makes a whole lot more sense that your boyfriend is in your life.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's this whole new wave of like feeling that my emotions can be there, because I numbed it out always. And then there was just one point that I couldn't anymore, just all came out basically. So I feel like my nervous system is overwhelmed of all these emotions. So it's like this whole new journey of like finding myself and like admiring myself, but also with all those emotions, because I always thought like when I feel those emotions or when other people see those emotions, I am weak or like vulnerable and like people can hurt me and all that stuff. But now it's like a whole new way of like, no, it's fine to feel this. And it's like even good and like, yeah, like nice to be yourself and like feel those emotions, because I always kind of like suppressed it while I was still feeling it, you know?
Yeah, it's very common to feel like an unpleasant emotion is wrong or a mistake, when actually emotions are never wrong.
No,
Ever.
it's like just something that comes out, right? We're also laughing. It's also like being happy is also an emotion. Why could that be okay? And like crying or like feeling sad or like angry is wrong. It's weird.
Yeah, that's right. They are never wrong. They just are. And if we don't know where they're coming from, that's okay. It's just a puzzle that we need to think about. And it's the same with the physical symptoms. They are a form of communication from your mind to your body. And your mind is trying to tell you something through this form of communication. If you're having mind to body symptoms, it is trying to say that there's something that you're not happy about. And if we can figure out what that is, then the symptoms will improve. I can also say that, your healing process, your recovery process from all this is going through a very good stage, a very normal stage, that you have done a tremendous amount of work, probably over the last 15 years. And you have been healing from a lot of trauma over that period of time. And when people get to a certain point in their healing, then, all the emotions start coming and you feel good enough about yourself to be in a positive relationship. And temporarily, there can be kind of a tornado of emotions going on, a storm of emotions happening all at once that can make people temporarily worse. But the reason it's happening is because you are finally healthy enough that your mind is saying, Hilde's ready for all these emotions. She can deal with it.
But I'm not.
So we're going to flood you with all of these things because you're ready.
Yeah.
And it's just temporary. It's just temporary. You've done 90 to 95% of the work already over the last 15 years. It's kind of surprising that things would get temporarily worse when somebody has done 90% of their healing or more. But I've seen that happen very often. It's when you get to the point in your healing and your recovery that all of those leftover emotions from long ago, it's like they've been let out of jail and they're going, yeah, we're coming.
That's how it feels. Exactly how it feels. Yes.
And it's like I say, it's only temporary. And when you're in the middle of it, it feels like, oh my God, the next 10 years I'm going to be doing this. That's not how it works. It is a sign of greater health, and it's a temporary thing. Hard to predict exactly how long, but for most of my patients, I would say it's measured in months.
Yeah, it also feels like it's supposed to happen, all of this, because I couldn't go any further the way I was doing it before all this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job. But you can also take courage and satisfaction from knowing that what you have been through before is much more difficult than what you are going through now. You have already solved bigger problems and overcome more severe circumstances than you're in right now. So that should give us both confidence that you are going to be successful with this as well.
I hope so.
All right. Well, before we close, do you have anything else that you would like to share with our viewers, or any questions that you would like to ask me?
I have some questions for you regarding the SIBO diagnosis. Can I just let that go and think okay, this is all just mind body and I can become better without it? Because I'm always doubting in the back of my mind, what if I don't cure it, or what if it's real, or what if it's, you know what I mean?
Yes. I haven't obviously looked at your test results, but real SIBO is very unusual unless you have something else wrong with your intestines. And you haven't told me that any of your many clinicians has found anything else wrong with your intestine. So in that case, a positive SIBO test is usually a falsely positive SIBO test, which means that you don't really have SIBO.
Okay, that's all what I needed to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's making me scared, and I feel like that scary thoughts and like that doubt is like also keeping me stuck, you know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that healthcare professionals haven't learned about neuroplastic symptoms. They are so focused on organ disease and structural damage as the only possible causes of pain or illness. And the ATNS is working very hard to change that, to make people aware so that people like yourself get the same quality of care as anybody else, so that you don't have to run from one clinician to another one, that you get the right diagnosis the first time and the right treatment the first time. We have a long way to go, but we are making steady progress.
Yeah, I feel like in the Netherlands it's even worse, because here it's like not known at all, the whole mind-body scene or like the syndrome. It's like,
yeah, there's a new organization. It's celebrating its 5th anniversary in the Netherlands, and it's called Stichting Emovere, Emovere, and you can find them online. They are having a conference in March, and I know some of their organizers personally, and they are a wonderful group.
perfect. Yeah, I think you sent it to me before one time, and I've seen it, their website or something, but it's not big at all. Like it's not, it should be in the news or like in the newspapers, or you know what I mean? But it's like nowhere. It's just like this one website that nobody knows about, basically.
Yes, that's right. But 15 years ago, most of us who were doing this work didn't know anybody else who even existed to do this. So we have come a very, very long way in just 15 years. And I think 15 years from now, it is going to be common knowledge, and people will know what the brain can do, the profound effects on the body in terms of pain or illness. Surprised me when I first learned about this 40 years ago, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Exactly.
And it's so rewarding to see people like yourself getting better. I think once people learn this, as one doctor told me, it put the joy back into her work.
Yeah, because if you can actually make people better, that's what you do it for, right? You become a doctor to make people better, and if that's finally working, then that's your end goal, basically.
Exactly right. All right, Hilde, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know everybody who sees this is going to learn a lot, and I also know that you are going to do very well.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. Thanks for this chance and opportunity.